Hello and welcome to the special series on population studies. Now, perhaps the greatest irony of climate change is that countries that have had the least to do with growing emissions are likely to experience the most severe impacts of climate change. Due to persistence of carbon in the atmosphere, global warming is inevitable under any scenario produced by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in the coming decades, and global greenhouse gas emissions will continue to increase at least up to the year 2020. While mitigation is critical, there is growing consensus that helping affected countries and people adapt to climate change is also important, since the impacts of climate change are already being felt and will worsen in future. While most international focus is on mitigation of climate change, including through well publicized international conferences and agreements such as Kyoto Protocol, the international community has also developed mechanisms to address adaptation. As such, adaptation as a response to the climate change problem has gained importance in the international policy agenda. The Bali Action Plan, an addendum to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, this is UNFCCC, recently identified the need for enhanced action on adaptation. A large share of the population in the developing countries is already vulnerable and living in marginalized areas, which are susceptible to climate variation and extreme weather events. Population growth is occurring most rapidly in the developing world, increasing the scale of vulnerability to projected impacts of climate change. In 2005, the average population density for the developing countries was 66 people per kilometer square compared to 27 people kilometer square in developed region. More than half, 27 of the 49 least developed countries or LDC are projected to be at least double their current population by 2050 based on the UN's most recent population projections. Human population growth will increase vulnerability to many of the most serious impacts of climate change. Scarcity of food and water, vulnerability to natural disasters and infectious diseases, and population displacement are all exacerbated by rapid population growth. Recognizing that LDC, including small island developing states, are among the most vulnerable to and with the least capacity to cope with extreme weather events and the adverse effect of climate change, National Adaptation Programs of Action, that is NAPA, were established as part of Marrakech Accords of the 2001 UNFCCC Conference of Parties. NAPAs were intended to provide assistance to LDC in developing plans to address the adverse effects. NAPAs, which are supposed to link with national development processes, provide an avenue for LDCs to identify priority activities that respond to their urgent and immediate adaptation needs. What is the experience with NAPAs to date? What interventions are being included in NAPAs? Is population and reproductive health or family planning, this is RH/FP, addressed in NAPAs, including through projects proposed by countries? Among the 49 eligible LDC, 41, that is 85%, have submitted their NAPAs to UNFCCC. According to the UNFCCC, the rationale for developing NAPAs rests on high vulnerability and low adaptive capacity of LDC, many of which count among some of the world's poorest. This demand in turns the immediate and urgent support for projects that allow for adaptation to the adverse effects of climate change. As such, activities and projects proposed through NAPAs are those whose further delay would increase vulnerability or lead to increased costs at a later stage. Now, this is according to UNFCCC. Acknowledging that countries need to have national adaptation plans which identify and prioritize not only the urgent and immediate needs, but also the medium and long term adaptation needs. Longer term national adaptation plans are part of the ongoing UNFCCC negotiations. NAPAs also provide an avenue for linking issues associated with implementing the 3 Rio Conventions on Environment. An important guiding principle in the preparation of NAPAs is that the process ought to be a bottom-up participatory approach that involves a broad range of stakeholder groups and focuses on local communities, considering their current vulnerability and urgent adaptation needs. Following NAPA's guidelines, countries undertake 4 steps to develop their NAPAs described in more detail. Number 1 is established a NAPA organization that should include local communities and representatives from various sectors like agriculture, water, energy, forestry, health and tourism. Number 2, synthesize available information on impacts, coping strategies, national and sectoral development plans to provide a baseline measure of vulnerabilities. And number 3 is identify projects through consultation with stakeholders and develop a list of priority projects. And number 4, submit NAPA to UNFCCC. Once a NAPA has been submitted to UNFCCC secretariat, the LDC party can start the process of implementation under LDC Fund, which is managed by GEF. To initiate implementation, an LDC party prepares a concept note and requests an implementing agency of GEF to assist it in submitting a proposal for funding to GEF under LDCF. The GEF agency then works with the country to develop the concept into a full project that is ready for implementation under the GEF project cycle. Osman-Elasha and Downing assessed country level NAPA process based on the 14 NAPAs submitted to the UNFCCC by April 2007, half of which were from African LDCs. The analysis built on interviews with the members of NAPA's team, and most important conclusion was that the NAPA's preparation needs to be viewed as a process and not as an end product. They also concluded that the main strength of the NAPA process was the creation of awareness and sense of ownership among various stakeholder groups at different levels, from policy makers to general public at the local level. The major weaknesses identified during the process of preparing the NAPAs were institutional barriers that hindered the free exchange of information, including communication problems between central offices and states. They found that NAPA's coordination teams are mainly found either under the umbrella of environment or the meteorology department and mostly represent the UNFCCC focal points. This composition of the teams has implications for the content of NAPAs. Financing is a key component of NAPAs. Although estimates of the level of funding required to assist developing countries to adapt to the impacts of climate change vary widely, there is a general agreement that the cost to the public and private sector could be in the range of tens of billions of dollars per year. The total estimated cost of implementing the 448 projects prioritized by 41 NAPAs is over $800 million. Yet currently the NAPAs fund the Least Developed Country Fund, that is LDCF, has mobilized about $176 million, hence a huge disparity between the financial needs of NAPAs and the mobilized financial resources. Furthermore, there is a consensus that resource shortfalls hinder funding of NAPAs and that countries are generally underestimating the costs of adaptation. Now, Article 4.4 of the UNFCCC commits developed countries to assist developing countries, parties particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, to meet the cost of adaptation. This assistance is understood to come in form of new and additional funding that is beyond what developed countries provide as overseas development assistance or ODA. Reproductive health or family planning and adaptation strategies in NAPAs. Now, since most of the NAPAs identify rapid population growth as an integral challenge to adapting to climate change, it follows that slowing population growth should be a key component in dealing with effects of climate change. Reduced population pressure can ameliorate some of the effects of climate change and or increase the ability of countries to adapt. Reproductive health or family planning has been recognized as one of the many strategies that can slow population growth and reduce demographic pressure. Yet, as mentioned above, there is limited identification of adaptation projects in the health sector, under which the reproductive health or family planning broadly falls. In addition, the identified health sector projects are not ranked favorably among the priority actions, and priority actions are likely to be implemented. Only 6 more NAPAs clearly state that slowing of population growth or investment in reproductive health or family planning should be considered among the country's priority adaptation actions. These countries include Cameroon, Ethiopia, Gambia, Kiribati, Zambia and Uganda. Furthermore, among those NAPAs that clearly make this case, only Uganda actually proposes a project with components of reproductive health and family planning among its priority adaptation interventions. Another project with reproductive health or family planning components is proposed by Sao Tome and Principe, whose NAPA neither links population pressure to climate change nor to reproductive health and family planning. In both Uganda and Sao Tome and Principe's NAPAs, reproductive health and family planning is integrated with other priority adaptation interventions. Comoros NAPA notes that population growth is a source of vulnerability and credits family planning programs for the reduction of the population growth rate. Even though NAPAs establishes clearly the linkages between climate change and family planning policies, the NAPA team fails to identify a priority project with reproductive health or family planning programs. In Ethiopia, high population growth is identified as one of the causes of vulnerability to climate change. During the NAPA process, mainstreaming family planning into agriculture was proposed in the regional consultative workshops as an adaptation strategy. Although the NAPAs identifies mainstreaming of family planning into agriculture as one of the potential cross-sectoral adaptation options, there is no component of reproductive health or family planning in any of the proposed priority agricultural projects. In Gambia, partly as a result of population pressure, the natural environment has taken the full brunt of unsustainable use of natural resources, as seen in the negative effects on the forest cover, rangelands, aquatic and marine organisms, as the NAPA reports. Taking cognizance of this fact, the NAPA proposes as a strategy for adaptation and stabilization of rural population. However, none of the identified priority adaptation actions have reproductive health or family planning components. Kiribati's NAPA mentioned that country has population policies to encourage family planning, although these policies are yet to have a substantive effect. In the final ranking of projects, the NAPA team clearly identified family planning as an adaptation strategy. Surprisingly, the identified priority projects did not have a single reproductive health or family planning project among the priority projects, despite the explicit mention. However, the document distinguishes between short-term adaptation, whose focus is on urgent and immediate needs through the NAPA, and long-term strategic planning for adaptation, which is addressed by an existing project outside the NAPA. The Kiribati Adaptation Project, which has support for population and resettlement as one of its programs. Sao Tome and Principe's NAPA mentioned the vulnerability of its essentially young, 79% younger than 35 years, and predominantly urban population manifested through frequent migration among coastal populations due to an increase of floods and coastal erosion. However, the NAPA neither acknowledges population pressure nor links it to climate change nor to reproductive health or family planning. Yet it is one of the few countries to identify a project with components of reproductive health and family planning. The project, ranked third and titled Communication Action for Behavior Change, has the objective of informing and sensitizing the population on behavior change for the prevention of diseases related with water, of vector transmission, and other problems of health linked to climate change. It specifically includes a component on family planning counseling. The Uganda NAPA makes a clear link between population and climate change and notes the need for family planning. The document identifies a negative social coping strategy, famine marriage, where in times of food crisis some parents distressfully marry off their daughters to secure dowry for survival. This fuels early marriages, dropping out of school, and exposure to sexually transmitted infections and related reproductive complications. The NAPA team identifies the Community Water and Sanitation Project, which includes slowing population growth through family planning as part of a scaled-up poverty alleviation program. However, project profile does not mention the specific interventions in reproductive health or family planning, perhaps anticipating that NAPA project activities would link with reproductive health and family planning services in the country. Zambia NAPA reiterates the importance of meeting the goals of 5th National Development Plan 2006-2010, which includes integrated reproductive health with the objective of reducing the maternal mortality ratio. Despite this clear appreciation of the role of reproductive health family planning in the NAPA and linkage to the National Development Plan, the project team does not propose a project specific to reproductive health family planning. Although population is mentioned as an important factor related to climate change in 37 NAPAs, only 6 NAPAs explicitly state that slowing population growth or meeting an unmet demand for reproductive health or family planning should be a key priority for the adaptation strategy, and only 2 NAPAs proposes projects that include reproductive health and family planning. Neither of the projects has been funded. Population size, growth, composition, distribution, and mobility are key factors in sustainable development and climate change. The links between population dynamics, reproductive health, gender equality, and sustainable development are widely recognized by the international community. They were emphasized in the International Conference on Population and Development, this is ICPD, Program of Action adopted in Cairo, Egypt in 1994, and Rio Declaration on Environment and Development from the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in 1992. Agenda 21 of the declaration includes reproductive health and family planning among the programs that promote changes in demographic trends and sustainability. These links were reaffirmed at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in June 2012. Rapid population growth and urbanizations are identified as significant driver of vulnerability in the latest special report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is IPCC Working Group 2 on Impacts, Adaptation and Vulnerability, which will inform the 5th assessment report. A growing body of evidence demonstrate the importance of population dynamics and women's abilities to adapt to climate change. Access to reproductive health and voluntary family planning is an important part of strengthening women's capacity to adapt. Yet in too many places around the world, access to these services is limited. Providing women and families with tools to prevent pregnancy can improve the socio-economic status of women, reduce strain on the environment and improve natural resource conservation, all of which make significant resilience in the face of climate change. National policymakers also recognize the connection between climate change and population dynamics within their climate adaptation planning processes. For example, a majority of national adaptation programs of action, that is NAPA, which are designed by countries to help them adapt to climate change, have identified rapid population growth as a factor that undermines and exacerbates the country's ability to cope with the effect of climate change. Some have proposed projects that invest in family planning and reproductive health. However, none of the projects submitted for funding under the key adaptation finance mechanisms include family planning or reproductive health. A majority of the projects funded fall under food security and water resources, with social sectors like health being less prominent. While food security, water resources and disaster preparedness are understandably important, family planning should also be part of the long-term social sector strategy for adaptation. As adaptation planning moves towards implementation and projects are being funded, it is important to explore the planning and financing landscape to examine how amenable it is for family planning or reproductive health programming. PAI reviewed 41st National Adaptation Programs of Action submitted by least developing countries, that is LDC, to United Nations Frameworks Convention on Climate Change to assess the NAPA's process and identify the range of interventions included in countries' priority adaptation actions. Their view highlights how population issues and reproductive health or family planning are addressed as part of LDC's adaptation agenda. A majority of national adaptation programs of action, that is NAPA, which are designed by countries to help them adapt to climate change, have identified rapid population growth as a factor that undermines and exacerbates countries' ability to cope with the effects of climate change. Some have proposed projects that invest in family planning and reproductive health. However, none of the projects submitted for funding under the key adaptation finance mechanisms includes family planning and reproductive health. Majority of the projects funded fall under food security and water resources, with social sectors like health being less prominent. While food security, water resources and disaster preparedness are understandably important, family planning should also be part of the long-term social sector strategy for adaptation. As adaptation planning moves towards implementation and projects are submitted, it is important to explore the planning and financing landscape to examine how amenable it is for family planning or reproductive health programming. I hope this information was useful for all of you. Thank you so much for watching.